Hello, everyone.
Hi.
We just started our conversation. We were so giddy on doing that. It's the question we had was: Is are we hopeful?
It's a good question.
And Sebastian has asked this question, and I would give this question to all of you, to all who joined there. Hello.
Hi.
Car, is it right? Car?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. We were just starting with the question: Are you hopeful? And this goes to every one of us. And Sebastian asked that question. I answered with yes. It's part of me is a cynicist, and the other part is hopeful. Sebastian answered with no, I'm not hopeful, and gave good reasons for that. And yeah, what do you say?
Yeah, I can start. So I had my ups and downs. I'm kind of in the climate movement since 3 years, engaging locally and in groups, building up an Extinction Rebellion local group, joining Fridays for Future demonstrations, trying to do conferences about climate. And honestly, I'm kind of really not hopeful. So I think it takes too much time to for a lot of people to realize the impact of what's happening, the climate crisis and the catastrophe coming and changing systems. And the 1-2 years ago, I was focused on the individual, on my own behavior, like becoming vegan, not flying anymore, doing all the stuff, bicycling. So, but I noticed then, okay, no, we have to change the systemic patterns. But it's so hard to change them because even if you're in politics, even if you have power in a company, but the company is on a stock market, it's so hard. You always kind of have just limited possibilities to change the stuff. So I'm kind of now a little bit pessimistic when I'm thinking also of Glasgow and thinking, okay, this is the 26th climate conference and the emissions still going up. So no.
Okay.
Not obvious.
Thank you. Welcome, Sabine, to you. We were just discussing the questions if we are hopeful. We have one part cynicist, one part hopeful. We have two who just recently said they are not hopeful. Who wants to go on? Markus, you?
Yeah, I can try to. I'm a bit divided too, but I said in the chat, I said I guess these days we need the competence to focus on the process, not expecting the results.
Yeah.
So otherwise, I don't really see the objective to not go depressed or crazy. If you are a bit into the different dimensions and listening closely, but we can start movements and we can have some kind of joy doing this. And I guess that I really think that's a competence, a skill you have to learn in focusing on this. Then it could feel something like hope. And the other thing is nothing is written, of course, in these complex days. It looks like, but we've solved, as humankind, we've solved such crisis. Of course, it's now more complex, but thinking back, World War II or something like that afterwards, everything was destroyed. Millions have died, but a few years later, we went from hell to, in Germany especially, to a democratic republic, and so very different. And we went to utopia compared to what people would have said 100 years ago. So we're living the utopia right now. So that's maybe another saying. Our life is too good, at least mine and people around me in Germany and stuff, to be pessimistic.
Okay, thank you. Carl, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I've been so a friend of mine is a Palestinian indigenous Bedouin woman living in a eco community in Portugal, and she, in a conversation with her, she said that hopelessness is a privilege, and it's a sign of privileged people, because you can only be privileged, you can only be hopeless if you have time to ponder and if you have time to converse around. If you just have to deal with a bare life and necessities, there is no way. You just do it. And there are so many people out there, and so many communities, and so many groups and tribes, and so many villages, and so many eco villages, and so many initiatives to just do it. So to me, the question whether we're hopeless or not, or whether there's hope is a weird concept. I don't really understand it. And I think the question is, it's a schismogenetic question, right? So why would we be, I mean, I appreciate the conversation and I appreciate the introduction to the question. But I think it doesn't necessarily lead us to the epistemologies and frames of references that we need to look through in order to get shit done.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Sabine, would you like to contribute something?
Yeah, I could. So I have really mixed feelings. Sometimes I have hope, sometimes not. So what gives me hope is that knowledge is there and technology is there. That it is, well, that if there was no technology and we really had no clue how to solve the situation, then it would be even more desperate than it is now. So I think that is there. It's just that we, for some reason, we cannot do it. And I think we have already heard many reasons for that, like the way evolution has made our brain work, and how that we are, well, trying to provide for ourselves more than for others, that us and our family and closest members, closest relationships are always more important than those people living somewhere else on a small island that is going to be flooded by water. And so this sometimes makes me lose hope. Also today when I went shopping, there was all these people driving to the supermarket. I'm living in a small city with a huge cars. That really makes me angry. I don't understand how you can buy such huge cars nowadays, but 50% or so of the cars that are being bought today are huge cars. So that is something that I really don't understand. So when I see these things, then I lose sometimes hope, but I still know that this is not the solution. And I compare it sometimes to my own lifespan. I also have no hope that I will live forever. But still, I will try to do my best to live as long as possible, to stay healthy. And I hope the same for the earth. Yeah. So even if we say, okay, maybe we cannot prevent something terrible to happen, then still we can do our best to stay healthy and to keep healthy together with humankind.
Thank you, Sabine. Rebecca, we are just had a first round over the question, are you hopeful, or do you have hope? Would you like to share some thoughts on that? The question was asked by Sebastian.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and thank you for including me now, for my coming in lately. I've just been checking on the other sessions and what's happening there to make sure everyone is happy and taken care of. So am I hopeful for the future, Sebastian? That's your question.
Yes, that is part of if are we hopeful on on what is being discussed actually now, where Dr. Martin is. Are we hopeful that we are going to achieve the results we need?
I would say I'm torn, honestly. When I look to current things going on, like Glasgow, for example, I feel it's the same. Everyone blocking each other, everyone waiting for the other party to take a step. That's for me kind of a feeling of that's procedure as usual, which has not helped over the last 20 years and which might not help right now. What is giving me more hope is what I'm seeing on the streets, for example, young people who are not willing to take it anymore and who are considering to sacrifice their comfort, the wealth they are living in for a better world, for a better tomorrow. That's actually making me very hopeful. And also my actually unwavering trust in that we as humanity have not developed linearly, but currently we are really developing in an increased exponential speed. And maybe I'm believing in a miracle, but I think we will find solutions for what is going on out there. And it might be actually just a few steps away, and maybe something like this, where you bring really people together who want to make a change. You can actually take the first step into the right direction. And that is maybe more powerful than all government discussions out there. So yes, overall, I am hopeful for the future.
Thank you. There is a comment. If we start looking for more than first order linear solutions. Okay, that's a bit of a it's adding to your response earlier, where you said, I don't know if the question about hope is the right question. Now it seems you respond in a kind of, hope, but only if we ask the right questions corresponding with it. Or do I?
Are you addressing me, Michael?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was actually adding to what Rebecca just said, that she's stressful that we find the right solutions, and there is this thing with solutions that I don't know who of you is familiar with the work of Nora Bateson. So there's first order solutions and there's more than first order solutions, and the first order solutions that have actually led to the problems that we're facing right now, right? So the solutions for the problems of yesterday are becoming the problems of today. And so if we don't look deeper for like the underlying questions, then we will only create more problems. So the question is, how can we look deeper, and how can we take care of the relational tissue that's underlying what we're facing here?
I'd like to open up this panel a little bit, or this breakout session. Sebastian has asked us a question. We shared our thoughts on that. You decided to come here, you as participants of this first conference section. Do you have something which you want to ask Sebastian, or what you want to ask in this breakout session, which we are able to discuss? Or did we?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion, the question what drives me most is, what can we do? Yeah. So what are the steps? Addressing this not being hopeful. Okay, that's not moving us. So what can we do? It's also related to the question: what if we fail? Because it's also an interesting question, because I have the feeling in this climate issue is discussed. If we fail, everyone is dead at the same point. So we're leaving the planet, humankind, and that's not the case. So it needs to be a bit more differentiated. So maybe, what can we do? What gets us moving? What are the next steps? That's the thing what drives me, because I want to do something.
Perfect.
Bastian, it seems you like to say something.
Yes, I listen to what you're saying, Marcus, and I think that it's a great opportunity for all participants here. Is what is your focus, and what do you think to do? What is the area that you're addressing? For example, I was listening to Jacob, that he was talking about all the transformation he did in his individual manner of living, going vegan, eliminating flights, and all that. But then you put your focus on the institutionalized level, like more in institutions. So I think that maybe we can have a round here in which everyone can share what is the focus, either individual goals, community goals, or institutional goals, and what are the steps or what are the main actions that each one is thinking regarding that. Yeah. So if everyone would like to start.
It's I'd like to add to that. It's the question about what is your frame of opportunity in which you as an individual can act. Do you have a coupling or a way to deal with institutions? Do you have partners with whom you can talk? Or is it purely private what you're doing? Yeah, Jacob.
So I can start. I try to do things on different levels. So if you focus on your private behavior, you can reach fast your goals of going vegan, not flying. So you can reach fast kind of behavior changes, but the impact is very low. And perhaps you get 2, 3, 4, 5 friends or 10 people around you, also inspiring, changing behavior. But it's in the total, it's not much, because I can maximum reduce my CO2 emissions to 2 tons. But that's the maximum I can reach with my lifestyle. Or on the other hand, we have kind of coal plants busting millions of tons in Germany into the air of CO2 emissions. So if I'm kind of an activist blocking a coal site, and or forcing them to stop that, my impact is bigger, but it's much more riskier. If I go to politics, friends of mine went to local politics or to state politics. They get more power, but it takes more time. So you have the possibility of a little bit more impact, but it takes time, and you're in the system game of politics, and still not so easy. Even if you go into that and I will change that, I will do it differently, the game is playing. And there's another level is the area of companies. Like I found out that's a little bit, there's a possibility to change a lot with a little effort. If you have contact to a CEO and the company is not on the stock market, and in Germany we say KMU, Mittelstand, the companies not the big companies. Then you can perhaps change as an employee or a group of employees or through contact to a CEO the behavior of the company and change a lot in a few times. So I'm thinking more what can I do with my skills which brings more impact, and I found one local group of organizations called Fossil Free, and they're doing fossil free groups. They're doing divestment. So they're going to pension funds, they're going to universities, they're going to city trusts, and saying, hey, please divest from oil, gas, and coal and put your money to other investments. And I'm surprised what these groups of sometimes 3, 4, 5 people can, what kind of results they bring. Because in the Netherlands, fossil-free Netherlands, just had the result of that a pension fund of 15 milliarden, 15 billion euro
15 billions, yeah.
is shifting now the money from that area. And so I'm thinking, wow, that's really impact. So if they do this with some communication and talks, this is really powerful. So for me, it's like, on which level, which impact you can reach.
Yeah, thank you. Who else wants to contribute with his or her thoughts?
Yeah, I can share my thoughts. So I started with myself. I think that is important also to be clear about what your own wishes and also your needs are. For example, I really like to travel. That would be also one question for Sebastian. I guess most of us are German based here. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, you not, yes. So you have, Sebastian will probably have a different perspective. So how I think things are seen differently from other parts of the world. So how much am I willing to reduce traveling, which I like a lot, in order to not to fly anymore, things like that. That is really, I think, a hard question for most people. So at the moment, really, it's not so hard because of Corona, I cannot travel anyway. But when this is possible, will I really do without that? I'm not sure yet. Other things I have done, so I don't eat meat anymore, and I have changed the heating system in my house and things like that. But I'm far from being perfect. I still have a car, although I don't drive it a lot. But I could do more. But I think I have done something. The next step for me was to somehow go public. So to find people like today who have similar interests, to find people with also discussions like that, and to make myself visible as somebody who is very interested in this topic. I'm working for a small company, 15 people only, but we are a company of coaches and consultants. So we are working in all kinds of different companies, and there we can enlarge our network. Yeah, these are small steps. We are together with 2 of my colleagues. We have founded a little initiative within our company and changed our power provider, for example, did compensation for the power consumption that we did last year by these are the things that we are doing at the moment. And we are also thinking about Gemeinwohlökonomie. This is something which I think is a very good step, but also a lot of effort to get enough information to really make sure whether we can go this way or not. I'm giving trainings, and I try to introduce the climate topic in each and any training somehow that I give. So by just having little exercises, that giving people tasks that is related to climate topics, just to start this conversation also with my training participants. There is an initiative in Germany which is called EduScrum, where I'm working as an agile coach where Scrum, which is an agile way of working, is brought to schools. And this is one of my friends, is biology teacher, and she has a project with her kids now about how to make an edible school. And this is working with agile methods now. That means they are working with teams of school kids, which is really unusual because usually the kids are they are just sitting there and listening to what the teacher says and repeating things like that, not really working as a team. And I think teamwork is very important. We need more teamwork. We need to address younger people and enable them as soon as possible to work, to take over responsibility and work as teams, instead of once they are in the system, it may be too late. Yeah, because then they are somehow eaten up by the existing culture there, and that is something not a good thing. As adding to what you already said, Jacob, I think you can change also things in big companies. I worked for Allianz, for example. There was a sustainability initiative that was started by a person I knew, and now it's really it's a search inside yourself mindfulness initiative. Now it's really rolling out in the entire company. Something similar I see within SAP. They're also doing a lot there. These are really huge companies. Yeah. And I talked to a person from SAP recently who has been part of this initiative. And that was really impressive and inspiring me how much you can do there. And this is, if you think about SAP, the kind of product they are selling, they really have an impact by when they say, okay, we don't use servers or we only use servers that are working with green energy and things like that. And also internally with initiatives, there are so many employees that you can reach. So I think for me, that is something working with organizations, where I see more chances than in the world of politicians that seems to be very, very slow and always looking at the next elections. Although I think the political guidelines and laws and regulations are really necessary.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to jump in here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing,
nice.
Sabina. So I think what I did personally was to go through a deep climate depression in the last years, like really fucking shit.
Oh,
Wasn't
what?
funny.
Sorry, can you repeat?
That was a swear word. I said I went through a deep climate depression. That was not funny, especially having small kids and realizing what we're up for and what's coming. And then like apart from like being engaged in Extinction Rebellion and Ende Gelände and all sorts of activists and also spiritual activism or sacred activism, connecting to indigenous networks, bringing this knowledge out, I want to share a few initiatives and thoughts that I'm engaged with. So that is, for once, a company or initiative that my cousin has founded recently that's called Planet Groups. And that is fostering groups of people in organizations that want to help turn the organization into a regenerative organization. And they help the groups of employees within the organization to get a buy-in from the management and then help spread this thinking and acting across the company. Super cool. And then I founded with friends together a company is called Friendy, FR. I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, that's my Jakob. That's my cousin.
I met him once. Yeah, so
fine. Well, this small, and we've set out to, and I'm referring to what Gitta said, that the climate crisis is actually a cognitive social crisis of global. Oops, someone's gone. Of a global, I forgot the word, size. Rebecca was that, okay. Yeah. And we are working with how we think and relate to the world and how we perceive. So we're working with our own epistemological frameworks and our own capacity to hold complexity and to think dialectically and to relate to the world. And with that, we've set out to also help leaders or people, whatever leadership is, people who perceive themselves as leaders or CEOs or leadership teams in organizations, to look at things in a different way and to relate to things in a different way. Exactly. And to relate to life as a process and themselves to being embedded in this process. And with that, we have founded an Erasmus Plus funded project called Cadra, and we're working together with a foundation. It's called Equaret Foundation in Sweden, and they have an initiative that's called Inner Development Goals, and they work together with a person who has also done the marketing and the design for the Sustainable Development Goals. And the assumption is that we do not reach the Sustainable Development Goals, not because we don't have the technology, not because we don't have the money, not because we don't have the knowledge, but because there's something in ourselves in terms of epistemological frameworks and sense making and capacities to hold complexity that needs to be learned. And so the question is, what are these inner capacities that we need to learn in order to be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? And with this initiative, we're reaching quite some people at the moment to make companies and also CEOs and groups of people aware that there's more, that there is an inner sphere and an underlying inner development to be done. In order to look at things in a different way, in order to develop the courage to relate to nature and ourselves as nature, and so on and so forth. So we just started a research project to look into what are these inner capacities that we need to learn in order to take the necessary steps, because we all know that some of these steps are not so easy to take. So it's not so easy to say no, and it's not so easy to do all the things that need to be done. And I'm engaged with the work of Nora Bateson, and I can only absolutely suggest to all of you to look into the work of Gregory Bateson, who's her father, and Nora Bateson, because there is a truth and life in this that I haven't seen somewhere else. And this is not linear, and it's not first order. It's about how everything is really interdependent, and that the questions like what can we do is already so complex, and the patterns are deeper than like what can we do and what can each individual do. Like the school system is in the economy, and the economy is in the health system, and the health system is in the politics, and the politics are in the media. So the patterns that connect these, that are contributing to the multiple crises that we're in, are more than one law concerning the health system can solve. So how do we even get there? And these questions is something that Nora's work is addressing. These groups of people and these conversations is what keeps me going, right? The connections and the relations that we're building. Yeah. So that's for me. Thanks for listening.
Markus, do you want to add something? Everything is already said, not by each one.
I've heard a lot what's on my mind too. Starting with, of course, we could do it tomorrow if we want. Yeah, it's basically that. Or who is thinking we are not able to do it? But as you said, Ka, all this interconnection stuff and all this systemic things lead to the view it's unrealistic to do it, but it's not impossible. So everything is there, yeah, to make it happen, to make a better world. But the question is why it is not happening, and that's one thing on my mind. And I guess what's hindering us is this deficiency debate. So we all talk about you have to do less from that, you have to give up this, and it's this negative connotation. So one thing could be to draw a real utopia. So what's better in a city without cars? So make it tell the story like people would like to have it. Not you don't have your car anymore, you can't fly anymore. So turning it around a bit and making up those utopias. How imagine how nice your children can play in a city where no cars are driving around everywhere. Imagine how it would be not killing animals anymore and just to have food and something like that. So the turning around the direction of our narratives maybe could help. So I'm thinking about how can I support this? How can I bring out those narratives to the world? That's something I think about. And of course, we talked about it. We heard it in the keynote and in the panel too. This grassroots initiatives. Yeah, every movement starts with one. So it's like that. And in the last election in Germany, not long ago, we saw at least the Green Party was voted with 15% roundabout. So as we know from the diffusion theory and something like that, that's close to a tipping point where systems tip. Yeah, when you have an innovation and want to bring it to the market, so something around 15% is when the system is tipping, because you need those early adopters and the innovators to show the middle, hey, it's working. So that's maybe something, I guess, when we get those 15% to show the others, it's fine. As I said, yeah, it's utopia. It's not dystopia. What we're talking about, we're talking about a better life. We're talking about more time, working less, for example. Yeah, eating healthier food and stuff like that. So maybe we could tip, and then it's exponential shifting, not linear shifting, because for linear shifting we don't have the time. It's clear. That are some thoughts I'm thinking about. How can I support those mechanisms? And I guess we have to have this positive narrative and showing, and so it's very important to do stuff. Yeah, it's not only talking about stuff, because you don't show with talking. Yeah, everyone can talk, but you have to do. Hey, I'm living vegan. I don't have a car. I do that, and other people can see it. So it's really functioning. So like Copenhagen with nearly just bicycles. Yeah. So they do it. It's a real life example that it's possible to have a city without cars and stuff like that. So those projects, showing the people reliving the examples, and maybe then we have a chance to tip. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now that everyone has shared his or her thoughts, these were all, I'd say, thoughts from the streets of Germany. Sebastian, would you like to add something from the streets of South America or Chile?
Yes, thank you. And well, yeah, it sounds a little bit like Berlin, like Sweden, like the Nordic countries. And I lived in Europe for a couple of years, in Spain, in Italy, and I've seen how your countries move. And I think that the contribution that I tried to make goes in two other lines. First, trying to connect with people in their pain, because there is a lot of pain going on, and the decisions that we make come from that cultural origin pain. In the end, yes, I resonate a lot with Gregory Bateson. I do believe that we are living an epistemological tragedy, but the thing is that tragedy is like water for the fish. We don't see it, and I think that the main key of support is to raise awareness around that. For example, I hear what you mentioned on on things that are the concern in Europe, but the concerns here in Latin America are kind of different. The pension for people here is like, in an average, 150 euros. What can you do with that? The problem here in Chile is that my brother, for giving my niece and nephew a good education, is around 500 euros per month. And if I recall well, in Germany, in Italy, even in Spain, you don't have to pay that to get a proper education. And when I got ill because I got an infection in my throat and I had to get a surgery, either I could go to the public service and wait for 10 hours to get a physician, and then getting an hour for a surgery 1 month later, or I could pay the 2,000 euros that it cost me, to get that. So on the other hand, we are talking about facing these or addressing these challenges, but 3 out of 10 homes in Santiago, Chile, have suffered a robbery in the past 6 months, including my home, with a takeaway of 15,000 euros in computers and stuff to work on. So when I bring back the question about hope, going back to that one, that is a question that operates in the present of each one of us. And I feel and I see that there is a lot of pain that it has been like for my last year, because it has been tough as shit. But also in the line of, for me, hope is trusting that something will be achieved. And when I recall back again to my participation in COP last year and seeing guys there stopping Burger King, that kind of makes you lose that track. And if I'm honest, what things I'm doing now in terms of addressing these issues, first is finding a way to secure a pension for my mother. That at the current state is 350 euros. My rent of my apartment is around 500 euros, only the rent, So how can I achieve that? First is securing, honestly, for the family, how we can live, The second thing is to first be able to look and accept my own pains for living the culture that we live. Because if we don't do that, I have no way of getting rid of this epistemological tragedy that we all live. Because if we do not face that, we continue bashing others or criticizing or putting, I don't know. We have to even see the arrogance that lies within us. And I talk to myself. We have to see the, stubbornness we have, the blindness we have, the suffering that we have been going through. And I feel that the main contribution that I try to do that is in opening the spaces for doing so. And the next challenge that I'm trying to cook as a project now, but I don't have much time to do that, is how to find ways to use the big key that we have to make these changes, which for me is private property. For me is buying and securing land and living in a different manner in that land. I think that the biggest impact that I have seen and that the world will ever see in terms of the ecological crisis is what the founder of North Face did, Douglas Tompkins. He took 15 years of his life to buy land in the south of Chile. He was from the 90s and the early 2000s buying land, coping with people saying, oh, this North American bastard is going to take on the land because Patagonia, it will be the secure place if we have a fallout because we have water and all that. And he bought, then he died. And 2 months later, his wife donated all of that as a national park for Chile. I feel that private property where we are the owners of the land in the system that we live today is the only key. So honestly, what I'm trying to do is to raise money, find money, and buy and secure land that I can be a godfather of, to be well, it's a bad translation from Spanish, that I can be a caretaker, that I can take care of it, and also I believe that participating, thank you, custodian. And honestly, I think that also just contributing to be willing to talk, to be willing to converse, to be willing to listen. Because I also put myself the question, do we actually listen to each other? Do we listen to ourselves? When we are in a conversation, how much of the conversation do we spend it looking different things in our phone or in the computer? Do we grasp the source of the epistemological tragedy that we are seeing in front of us? Do we take the time to give an embrace? So I think those are kind of the things that, and once again, I don't want this to be heard as the, Latin American bashing around how we live here in Europe. On the contrary, I have experienced what is to live there. I have visited and seen communities in Spain, the slow movement in Italy as well. There are a lot of amazing stuff, but and also this connects to the things of the technologies that we were talking before. We have the technologies to transport water. Why do we keep why are we still conserving the lack of water for a kid in Africa? If the Romans already invented the canals, we have those technologies from thousands of years. The thing is, why do we not care yet for another human being? If Marcus had a cousin in Africa that has not a gallon of water, for sure you would even take a plane to bring it. I would do it too. We don't not care about ourselves as a species, as fellow speciesicians. We don't realize that we are the present of nearly 4 million years that brought us here. We are the present of the conservation of a process that started 4 million years ago. And what are we doing with that miracle? And I think that those are also kind of the questions that I hope that we can bring to the panel, there in Glasgow, because why do they have their head so stick? So I cannot say it in this public space, but you know what I mean. Why do they have their heads stick in their pots? Why? Because they make plans for commitments for 30 more years. They will be long dead and gone. Doing that is that they don't care. Do we want to know what is quick and easy to do? Close factories. Let's find different ways. We cannot continue on this way of trying to convince, because it won't happen. And I resonate with the local actions that we can take. I try to take as most as I can. But I believe that also, like the path of Extinction Rebellion and other organizations like that, where you can go on the street and just do it, are necessary. The problem here in Chile is that, well, we have the militaries in the south because the indigenous communities are kind of doing chaos. People are being killed in the street because of an iPhone. A couple of guys were doing some tours, like stabbing people for 15 euros for an iPhone. So what do we do? Like the climate crisis, or little kids actually of 2 years old were dying of, we call them crazy bullets, like bullets that hit innocent people. So what do we take care of? Like the narcos that are here and that are killing innocent people, the indigenous communities that are claiming for the land that they should rightfully have, but these indigenous communities are mixed with the narcos. But also we have the housing issues. And so where do we start? So I think that in the end, compassion to ourselves and compassion to others, in order to be able to continue holding the spaces of conversation in mutual respect, in transparency, and in resonance, are the main thing that I try to contribute. At the same time that I recognize and I see the illness within me of this illness, this epistemological tragedy, and all the pain that this has meant. If we do not recognize the pain, if we do not recognize that it hurt, we will never go to that first layer, to that inner source.
Okay.
And as Forrest Gump said, that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. I have the unpleasant duty to bring this breakout session to a close. I'll post the link to the Formworld website, where you can find the links to the other breakout sessions. And as closure, I'd like to ask you, Sebastian, one last question, maybe a quick answer. During this breakout session, is there something which has evolved in your perspective, which has changed? Would you like to share this with us?
Yes, like for sure, it's always energizing to be in these spaces and listening different perspectives and seeing the passion there. Also, I must confess that maybe my birthday was bumming me down a little bit, because I don't know, I can see a little bit more gray hairs in my beard and like the usual stuff that happens, I don't know, at 35. The thing is that what I take from here is a little bit more strength to continue pursuing this path of regenerative transformation, because God knows that it's necessary, especially living in this Latin America that is being politically intervened, that is being, I don't know, by the Pandora Papers, we found out that the president was involved in selling some reservoir that is a unique ecological place for a mining business. Guys, remember the country that hosted COP25, the president. So, we need to get all the strength that we can in order to see that the things and the actions that we as individuals do are worth it. Sorry, it was longer than expected.
No problem. Thank you very much. Thank all of you for your participation. This is not an easy feat to do. Come together, get into a connection with each other and talk. You are the main idea is that you switch to another breakout session, but as I said in the chat, I think this is not mandatory. We are all 3 people here under Formworld, but it would be nice, I think, for the other panelists if they get some attention. Okay, thank you all. Here will be a 10-minute break or 7 minutes at 18 p.m. I was very fond of what you said of this concept of getting together as human people to ask what is this which makes us human, and to acknowledge the struggle everyone is having. The kid on the streets in Chile, as well as the mother of 2 kids in Germany who has climate depression. It's the same struggle with different different faces, I'd like to say, and we tend to put them in a hierarchy. My struggle is more important than your struggle, and I think that's totally that leads us nowhere. we have to see each other in the eye and acknowledge that everyone has, you say, the pain, I'd say the struggle in coping with the pain. And I think that's important. Hello, Martin.
Hello, sorry, I had some struggles to join.
It's all everyone struggles. Yeah. I think we wait for another minute, and then we'll see, and then we get the conversation going, or we get the other ones in. We were just talking about individual struggles and recognizing each other as a human being, and not putting the individual experience of pain into a hierarchy. My pain is more important or more painful than your pain, and acknowledging that. Would you like to get into the conversation, or yeah? Oh, Christian is coming. Just go, Martin, if you want to say something.
Yes, I think this way of comparing us to each other is something we learn at school. When we are at school, because you get marks for whatever you do, and this is always comparison to those who are better and those who are worse than you. And this is something that happens during your whole life, in job as well. You are always in competition with others, and so you when you suffer from something, you kind of check how do others suffer, and when you consume something, you also check: is the car of the neighbors is it bigger? Do they have the barbecue more often than me? And I think that's something that's so natural for all of us, and we need to reflect on this actively in order to get an idea of what happens.
Yeah.
Hello, Christian. We were just talking about hierarchies of pain, which are totally non-functional, I'd say, and Martin was just reflecting on the subject matter that we learned this in school, that we live in a society where hierarchy and comparing yourself to your neighbor, to the people next door, is deeply rooted.
Thank you very much for guiding me in. And hello, everybody.
Yeah, but Sebastian, I think you wanted to say something.
Yes, and I think that, well, hello, Martin.
Hi, Sebastian.
From last year. Yes, I think that also the trouble there is that they teach us without us being aware that we are being taught to be in competition, and the problem with competition, of competing with my grades to another, competing with do I have the bigger car or the biggest buffet, is that competition always implies someone that is losing, and when we see the state of the world today, we see that we are experiencing the consequences of losing to the greed of a few, losing to the ambition of a few, losing to the need for power of a few. But it is a whole planet that is experiencing and living the consequences of it, and that generates a pain in each sentient being in this planet. And yes, first we need to look at ourselves. Where do I compete? Where is the competition within me? Where is the pain within me? Where is the arrogance within me? Because those are all aspects of a patriarchal culture And talking about the patriarch, not only from the perspective of feminism, where it's put like in the man that abuses the woman, but putting in the perspective that there are patriarchs in this world that are abusing the rest of the world. You know, we can see it there in big companies, big CEOs, big dictators, big families, even. Particularly like in Europe, where we find like a big concentration of old families that have been governing and reigning for years. The easiest example, well, in Germany, there are a lot of old family businesses that may have a lot of the GDP of the country. If we take a look at the case in Sweden, where we see the Wallenberg family that owns like 60% of the GDP. At least they have been smarter in terms of creating a system that at least operates much better than it does at least in Latin America or in Southeast Asia. But why do we have that concentration? You know, and that is completely fueled by competition. And all that we see there, I see it within myself as well. First of all, recognizing that I earn month per month more than the average in Chile. Do I need that? Yes, for holding the manner of living in a system where it's expensive to live a certain basic level of life. Yes, I need it. But what are the consequences that I'm creating by accepting that? And if I don't accept that, I don't have the 3,000 euros when I need a surgery, because in the public system, I won't get a good one. So how do we balance that? How do I cope with that within me? Over.
Everyone is free to contribute. Hello, Jürgen. Hello, Dominic. Nice that you join us here. We were just talking about social hierarchy of experiences of pain, which are seemingly not very functional. And we were just talking about competition in general as something which is deeply rooted in our society, and even to the point that wealth is greatly concentrated on a very few people.
Yep. First of all, Sebastian, did I get you right in your contribution in the panel that you created a new word out of economy and society called econ-society? Because
no, that wasn't.
No, so it was a mismatch in my ear, but
yeah, either my English is getting poorer, or no, but it wasn't.
Yeah, but I think this is this comes out of this perspective, because our society is defined by economy. And so it makes sense to take this perspective and put these two words together and say we're no longer just a society, but we are kind of an econ society or something.
Sorry, that is interesting, because actually we can see that we have two big words going around today: economy and ecology. Both begin with the same root, the oikos, the house, the home. The thing is, how did we live? Why did we left 99.9% of the power decision in the economy, and we left 0.01% of the power decision to the ecology? Mm-hmm. And yes, one is organizing the goods for our living in this home, and another one is the awareness of our home. And we have no awareness of it because we detach from it in order to give room for economy to see our home as the source of resources for manufacturing goody goods.
Well, I came in a little bit later, so I heard you talking about competition, and now picking up what Martin is saying. So do you relate it back to competition then? Because of competition, we are focusing on that, and yet dividing and forgetting about caring about our home and more caring about the economics.
I believe competition takes a huge part of responsibility on it, but maybe not only competition. Why? Because if when we look at all the graphs, we see that in the Industrial Revolution is when things really started to go down the toilet, down the drain, on population growth, but also in the amount of discard that we created with what we do. But with the origin of that, it also originated a view of our life in which we give for granted that when we are born in this place, that things are as they are, and they have always been like that. There are cars going around. I have to go to the school. I have to get the best grade. And then, like when I was young, I had the whole plan laid out for me. Go to school, go to college, meet a nice girl, get a good job, get a good car, buy a property. But when do we stop and just say, really? Isn't there another way? You know, and the things that we live in this epistemological tragedy created by the independent conservation of a manner of organizing how humans being should develop themselves in this time they have in the planet. You know, and yes, competition takes a huge chunk of it, but also is the lack of awareness, of self-awareness, you know, and our capacity to make choices, to make decisions. And yes, we have created such a huge architecture that it's even hard to get rid of it. Like, you have to become an eco-village, you have to become like an outsider in order to make it. So everything is arranged in that. So how do we make an orthogonal intervention, something that completely shifts the system?
But would you say that it may be the wrong focus we have with competition? So I mean, I agree to a lot of things you just said, but there's also some good things in competition. But maybe I'm focusing on a different level in competition. So I feel we are challenged. Okay, I call this entire thing. I'm here. This is a challenge, and somehow, to some extent, we need to change, and we know that. So there is a competition against or towards the challenge we are facing, while we previously did compete. Yeah, for what? I don't even think we did know what we are competing for. But now it's the awareness. Okay, there is something we need to compete against, but it's no longer the GDP or whatever it is from the old days. It is something that is in the perspective of the future. So that is a competition, because a competition. So I understand competition like, you know, you have the task to do something better, you know. But I'm carefully saying the purpose maybe have shifted or should shift.
If we look at the definition of competition, and it's really interesting. It's the activity or condition or striving to gain or win something by defeating or establishing superiority over others.
Thank you.
You know, and that is the thing. The problem in competition is that our point of reference is another one that we need to defeat. Something different that I will put there is to be. I'm trying to translate from Spanish, to be competent on something. To have the capacities to do well what I do well because it makes sense. It doesn't matter if my neighbor does it or what are we want to be competent on in order to achieve the purpose that we have.
Exactly.
I understood from you, Sebastian, that there is a major point in having an unconditional income in order to follow my own destination in life. And that we have to restructure our economies with regard to what is the purpose of our economy. Is it just producing more goods, or is it contributing to our selves' well-being?
Awesome. And there I put a question as well. Why do we need our income? To get housing, to get food, to get health, to get warmth, to get entertainment. Why does it have to be via income? in the first. And that is one of the parts of our living in the system. When we visit eco villages, we see that they have all of those stuff, but no need for income, because we can organize ourselves in order to produce those things. In the end, I need my income to go to the market to buy my vegetables. I can grow my vegetables. I need to get my income in order to pay rent, in order to contribute to a giant bubble in Chile, just like in Germany, that it's about to pop. Why, if we could distribute our land in a more adequate manner? And the thing is that we always put these things for granted, like income, like the fiat currencies that we are in. But do we take a look at the roots of the consequences that they entail? And that is something that is important, because we start depending on them. And for sure, if you leave me on a field, I won't be able to grow my vegetables in order to eat. I won't be able to produce a home. So we lost track of those abilities. And how do we bring them back?
Yeah, but this is not necessarily a must. As we know from ancient cultures, there were also, let's say, people who delivered goods, who delivered food. The exchange was always there.
Yes, but at a certain moment, all of those societies collapse.
Yeah,
like, for example, the Egyptians, like they completely desertified, not desertified, they killed the resources that they had in order to grow their own stuff. In Latin America, a lot of civilizations went through that. Some of them disappeared, but then the Spanish came and they wiped them all. But why cannot we find spaces to foster in our self-sufficiency?
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm not trying to put the point against of what you're mentioning, but to put another foreground on the side.
I felt it as an enrichment.
Yeah. Thank you.
One question could be to further the discussion in this round. We were talking about systems of dependency. We are dependent on our income, so we can buy our rent, and so on and so on. To bring in the thought of emancipation. Now we all agree with that. That's the game we don't like, and we have to play it more or less. How can we emancipate each and everyone in his own life bubble?
Good question.
Yes, I'm the moderator.
No, I might jump with a small thing that where do I think that there is a big key that we all can open, that we all can have in order for this, is in private property. I believe that in the system that we have, if we want to make this shift, private property is a good key that we have. Why? Because we can gather a sufficient amount of people that can own lands and community and create their communities in order to make a different living. The thing is, how do we make this transfer from the current manner of living that we have with the comforts that we have? First, on recognizing which one do we have to let go, and then which ones we want to conserve in this transition to a different manner of living.
Yeah, this has to be done by the public discourse we need to initiate, and we need to initiate powerfully.
I need to get that again. You're promoting, and please correct me, but if I don't get it right, you promote private, so that we have privately land again and experiment in a new way, or what is it?
Yeah. For example, here in Chile, in the woods in the south, there are two choices. Either the woods are used for forestry, for growing pines and then bring them down, or I can own some of that land and make something with it different. In the previous conversation, I was putting the example of Douglas Tompkins, who for 2 decades bought land in the south of Chile in order to create a park. Why was he able to do that? Because in the exchange for his money, he was owner of the land. You know, those are the things that I believe that gives us an opportunity, you know, because...
Okay, but this is all already happening, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if you are familiar with Jack Fresco, but he had this idea of having a small location and trying to get it grow. I don't know what the reason is that it, you know, doesn't make that big impact, because it's running for what's called for years at least, for maybe for decades. And I must say, there was a short amount of time where I was in the, what's it called, Zeitgeist movement, and I think you are familiar with that one. So they have a Discord channel, and there was this, I think they were from Norwegian or Finland, where they tried to approach not exactly the same, but the same thing. So, but you don't hear that much about these things. It's like there is some boundaries that I keep, you know, lowering the possibilities of that one. And what could that be?
I believe, and I put it in me, I will put it in my experience, is that it's hard for me to see the path of the transition.
Yep.
You know, and step by step of the transition will be really helpful. But in order to do that, we also need the time and the processes and the procedure. Yep. And we are still facing the fact that I have to work 9 hours a day, many times also on the weekends, you know. So when do I find the time in order to follow that procedure?
Yeah. And then there's one thing I just came up with. So recently I've researched a little bit about the economical systems change and transition that had happened in the USA for the last 200 years. And if you look there, I mean, when the Europeans settled over to America and they, you know, took the land from the natives and so on, they also owned properties. And they became actually God in their own little environment. So they had slaves and they had, you know, poor people that needed to work. You know, how can we prevent that something like this happens again? Because we don't want ideologies. We don't want one person in charge for everything, you know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, slaves, we have still, slavery still exists. Now it's in factories or in different places. But the thing is, just like what is happening here, gathering like-minded people in order to use this tool as disposition with big level of awareness and hope for the best, you know, because if not, it can also happen. I don't know if you guys have seen this documentary about the Rajneesh Puram, about Osho, that is on Netflix.
Oh, I don't know.
Wild Country. What Osho did in Oregon as a community, the design, everything was perfect. What was the problem? Okay, the abuse, the traffic of influences, and the illegal immigration. Okay, yes. But in terms of how it operated, I think that we had some clues there. The problem is that it was a cult, you know? How do we do this without becoming a cult? And that is by fostering, I believe, reflexive autonomy and to letting others appear in the conversation. So I will shut my mic now.
Reflexive autonomy is a nice word, another framing for emancipation. How could we foster reflexive autonomy? Everyone in his own life, in his own surroundings, in his own little ecosystem.
Can we go around of that?
Yeah.
And I will invite the participants in the conversation to do that.
Yeah.
Can you bring forth in this conversation one shadowy part of yourself?
A shadowy part of ourselves. Okay.
We have light and shadow. The first part, in order to move forward into reflexive autonomy, is, can you recognize the shadow within you?
I think most people here can recognize the shadow in themselves. That's, I think, part of our experience and our reflected experience. But is that the right question? I wonder. Or should we direct this question, let's say, to the point, how can the nation or the state guarantee that there is a freedom available which fosters the emancipation of the individual?
It could be as
because
well.
then you are not digging into the psychologies of the people. You're more in the social sphere and have a social discourse on problems or issues that really matter.
Yeah, well, we can do that. There's people in Glasgow trying to do that. We have had 26 conferences about that. So if we want to give it another shot on that way, good luck. But I believe that in order to start the process, it starts from ourselves.
Yes, that's.
Well, that is the usual outcome of any movement I am aware of. That it starts as a movement, the people going together. Some of them are just joining for being a part, But then at some point, this movement questions itself again. Okay, and what now? And then something happens. Then some people will come together and do something. And I mean more than just, going on the streets and making protests. So that did happen everywhere. The question is, how can we speed that up?
That is a good question. Any thoughts?
No, I wouldn't be here if I didn't know. Maybe anyway, because I made a statement. There's two reasons why I'm here. Okay, one thing is because you as an individual cannot make up. You cannot grasp the whole. That's impossible. So you need to have conversation, reflection, which in my opinion starts with conversation and discussion or discourse. So, and the other thing is because there's a movement needed, and there's more movement needed. Some call it grassroots. I don't have a special or particular word for that. So this is the first stage, and I think no one really has the answer. But if nothing happens, and if it's too slow, well, I'm particularly afraid. I'm a native German or born German. I hate actually to talk about nations because I couldn't decide where I was born, how I look, and whatever. But I can see all these nations around me in the northern part. They have a lot of problems with races. And well, the climate thing will just transform more climate refugees, and I can fully understand it because if I were there, I would do the same. That's natural, You're keeping for survival, but we are in the trouble that we cannot find out how to tackle it, and it needs to be faster because, well, if nothing happened, then it will be the social collapse, I think. So, but I have no reply on how to speed it up. That's why I'm here.
And may I ask you a question?
Yeah, always.
What changes have you made in order to speed up your own process?
Well, I think that took me a while to understand. So I'm doing a lot more historical research than I ever did before in my life, and I'm trying to to get all the tools and methods and thinking process I've discovered earlier in my life to make a transition and woven it together, weave it together, So, and then there's just one thing that pops up, maybe unconsciously more, I need to do something. And that starts here in the mirror, but I cannot, tell people, look at yourself, because they need to discover that point. So what I'm right now looking at, okay, how can I do this without, going into people's minds as the psych part, because I don't want to touch it. But how can people discover that by themselves? And that is so far through experimentation. And that is learning from, what you imagine will happen and then getting the confrontation with what really happens. So, and there's maybe more than one way to do that. So, but I'm looking for how I can do that now. So this is where where I'm at right now. So if that happens, I don't know. Only the experiment will show me.
Exactly. Is A/B testing all the way?
Learning by doing.
Yes.
This is why we are doing this conferences, to trying to build a social sculpture, trying to raise new questions, and then define what's the most, where can we do something, where can we do something together with people all around the world, where can we build communities or practice groups, connecting and work together all over the year, not only these few hours we meet here. And raise new questions, and then decide, okay, let's define one project and we take this now and let's work together, and everybody brings in his or her perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are in a bubble here. We all have this recognition. It's we're not awakened maybe, but kind of aware. And when we talk about being even more conscious, would be nice, but we are the ones who have to take responsibility for working on the system now.
Jürgen, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, it was a striking question, Sebastian, you just mentioned. I feel that it has very much to do with what Gitter often mentions, also our conditioning. This is the conditioning we experience in our families. This is the conditioning we experience in our schools. This is the conditioning we experience in our jobs or universities. And all of our life is a conditioning process. And I feel to act responsibly in the world requires to emancipate from these conditioning patterns we have incorporated in our bodies and minds, and try to free oneself without compromises, let's say. In order to gain a freedom which is directly coupled to responsibility. And when you are responsible, you act differently. You act differently within your family, you act differently within your job at the job site. And you maybe you are a good member for society because they see that there is a distinguished person who has developed him or herself in a direction which is quite meaningful.
Yes.
Yes, and this leads us back to but this leads us, from my point of view, to education. I mean, this is something which is not supported in our education systems. We just learn things we need to be a functional element for economy. But not all these things, not reflecting what we are doing, what we want to do, how to deal with others, how to compete in a maybe friendlier or healthier way with others. We don't learn all this. So we have to make big changes in education systems. And this is a hint for next Saturday's conference. Oh, no. Okay.
That's a good way to put the spoilers for the next.
But those things are intertwined, they are not separated from each other. Now there's an interlinkage, let's say, or interlinkages between all these different societal and individual connections we have.
Exactly. And that's where I recently really, I don't want to say fanboy because that would be ideologizing, but I discovered Russell Acuff saying that if you just touch a part of the system, then you maybe make it worse. So if we say the education system is one part of the entire thing that surrounds us, if you just dig on that, well, yeah, it will help. Maybe. Oh, sorry. Sebastian, I'm getting an echo.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Oh, it's okay. I just want to say. So if we just touch the education system, then we may see an effect, but delayed compared to the small time slot we have. So there's more that we need to do. That more leads us back to movement. And, I think at some point, someone told me it was about lobbying, really. And I was always afraid of the word lobby, because of the things you see around. But maybe it's really like this, you need to provoke every system to some extent to make these changes fast and rapidly. But then again, it's you will probably need people that are close to these things where they can make an impact, where they can play the influencer,
Mm. Yes, and I apologize for the noise. I was sharing and I was looking to share on the chat a video from Jay Forrester. I don't know if you for you to look later, which is World One, a project that he did in the 50s, in the late 50s, that was already showing the interconnectedness, was already showing that by 2020 we will be experiencing the collapse that we're living today. And why do I bring that forth? Is because, yes, I'm also responsible of being part in the movement of raising awareness. The thing is that if Forrester started there, the Club of Rome started like 50 years ago or something like that. We have Greenpeace since the 70s, like putting themselves between whales and big ships. The thing is that until when is the adequate moment for raising awareness, and when is actually the focus of all that we do in doing, in making the change, because this reminds me also of a big master of mine, Alan Watts. I don't know if you know him. And Alan Watts, he said, like, choice is the act of hesitation one makes before making a decision. Because we wait for making a decision for all the possible information, but we can never get it. We will never get all the information in order to make a decision. And the answer he gives is just regard yourself as a cloud in the flesh, to move as a river and to just go and do it, And when I say this to you, I say it to myself also, I'm putting it like, why not just do? Because we are aware of this like for a while, especially in Germany. You guys have Rudolf Steiner, for a long while we know.
Yeah, there are a lot of spiritual directions which, let's say, address a crucial point in our existence, and one must be aware that those spiritual directions or spiritual communities also condition. Also, let's say, Zen communities. I think Alan Watts was also a Zen monk, or was very fond of practicing Zen. And I was also part for many years in a Zen community, but it led not to my liberation in total, so I had to leave it. Yeah, so as we pointed out several times in this conversation, the freedom and the emancipation is a very precious element in our tackling of the climate catastrophe, coming back to this issue.
Okay, I'm just writing in the chat that we have roughly 10 minutes to go, so we have a perspective about time. I'd like to add another question. We've established that we are more or less alike minds when it comes to that we see the urgency for change. What can we do? This was also a question I've noted myself from your reaction to the keynote, Sebastian. What can we do, each of us, to set proper attractors for the people in our surroundings to see this urgency for change too? You know what I mean? It goes to all in this room. No? I could go and say, you all have to change. The end is near, and I'm the next prophet of the apocalypse, and everyone goes away, or I go to the mental hospital. How do I set the proper attractors for the people in my surroundings? Stefan, would you like to say something? I saw your finger. That would be nice.
Yes. So this is my voice.
Great to hear.
Hey, hello.
Hello. Okay. The attractor, yes. This is only my personal experience to be a challenge here. And I find this very fascinating because I work in this kind of, we didn't call it bubble at that time, but communities for now more than 20 plus years, and different stages from grassroots to then really also the political arena, for even to the European Commission, where I have been a special advisor, all that stuff. What I find interesting is that during this period in my life, the level of awareness raised naturally. So awareness, I claim today, is not our main attractor. And gladly it raised through all these different things, as you have mentioned already. And some have been ideologically biased, and some have been factual biased, and some have been scientifically biased, which can also become ideology. But what really triggered people now very strong is the direct experience. The direct experience of weather changes that causes floods, that causes droughts, that causes, in businesses, by the way, that the collapse of supply chains, not only in the food system, but also in industrial systems. So what is the attractor now is, the main question is how can we actually become an active contributor to the change? And I think this how-to is the most important point and leverage. So creating opportunities for people to learn in action, to learn together, to apply together, to co-create together. I think this is the attractor. This is why in the chat I have proposed, not my own initiative, I'm not making advertisements here, but for instance, Donut Economy Labs, which I find marvelous in the way they are structured, in the way they're giving the knowledge to the people, in the way how they create capabilities without asking for property, which, by the way, is a question I would absolutely second. The leverage is in the question of property, which does not mean nobody can earn anything anymore, but proprietarization and the tragedy of the commons are quite a strong leverage. And to understand that this knowledge, this applied knowledge, is a commonality. It's like is the commons. I think this is very important. Which then, of course, raises other questions, like how can organizations who are providing people with this knowledge spaces where they really co-create, where they really act, how can they be sustained? Because as long as the individual earning is coupled to a monetary flow, which is also individualized, it becomes quite an obstacle to create these spaces and to sustain these spaces. But I think these are the attractors, and we really need to put as much attention, as much of our own time, and what is it called? Also our love, sorry for this word now, but our, the compassion into this. And this is what I personally do, for instance. And thus, I am not getting super rich with all the knowledge I have, but I try to provide as much as I can.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts on attractors?
Yeah.
Time is running out, but
I would pick
a
up
few
just
thoughts.
shortly on what Stefan just said. The very first trigger, I was triggered by a word actually. There was the how to. How to, I feel, is always like to instruct. But I totally get your point, and I really liked it. So I can only say, because of your question, Michael, what we are doing. So what I do in another bubble, so to speak, what we call Kader schools, is that we are offering people, that we are offering people to pick up a challenge they think is challenging them, and then let them learn by their own experimentation to achieve these challenges. So what did happen during this time, despite that there's also some ideological trends, I must say, to be very careful. And I think that is somehow a natural thing, or I don't know. But what did happen that amazed me is that some people bring this from very small private challenges to a little bit bigger challenges. Like there's this group working on no racism, and they really make efforts to building surroundings where there is no racism. And by learning by doing, and they do it. I think it's a new trend word, or I'm not aware of it, but they call it cohorts, So they're making these small spaces where people come together. They are challenging their mind and experimenting towards something. So it's not the how-to, but more like an offering the place where you can do it,
Okay, thank you. One more idea set is okay.
You gain new perspectives today, Sebastian.
Oh, okay. The last question.
Sorry.
all is fine. Yeah, Sebastian. To close the breakout session. The same question as in the end of the first breakout session. Did you get any new perspectives? Did you do you take anything away with you from this?
Yes, of course. Yeah. First of all, I take with me all the people that I heard, that I listened to, and particularly this. Once again, the energy of seeing that there are other people caring for this and passionate about this, and just one more grain of fuel. Sorry. Another particle of light for my solar system energy source, for just doing it, for just giving it a shot. If there is a trigger, in order to support this, is just trying to be a living embodiment of the transformation we want. There is no other way. Just being a living embodiment, and from there, hopefully, infecting another one with this virus of transformation.
That's a very nice closing word. I thank you all for participating in this breakout session. I thank you, especially Sebastian, for your contribution.
I need to ask before you're closing. How can we reach Sebastian?
Oh, I can share my email.
That's
Thank
very
you.
nice. And we have also
Maybe a LinkedIn profile as well, if you want to connect.
Oh yes, for sure. I will.
We are already, because we met last year. But, not all of us.
And we all have the opportunity to meet at WonderMe during the whole November. There's a room for coffee breaks, and there we can talk besides the main events.
Yes, but to shortly manage the expectations, there is no coffee in this room.
There's
you have
no
to
coffee.
bring your,
You-
you have to bring
yes.
your own coffee.
You have to bring coffee, tea, beverages as you like, chips, and whatever. You have to bring it with you. Okay, Sebastian, you want to?
Yeah, hopefully organic coffee and in a reusable cup.
Of course.
It's very important.
Oh, I cannot
Thank
copy
you
out
so
of
much.
this.
Is this okay? Yes, reusable. Okay. Okay, then I'd like to, with heavy heart, I close the session. I thank you all. I thank you, Sebastian. I thank you as participants, and thanks for sharing. Thanks for your thoughts, and I hope we see each other again sometimes in this form or another.
Or tomorrow at the panel economy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Thank you so much,
Sebastian.
Michael.
Have a nice birthday, at least what's left of it.
Yeah,
Yes.
happy
Yeah.
birthday, Sebastian.
Thank
All the
you.
best for you.
Right,
Yeah.
you spent your birthday with us.
Yes,
Bye.
that important it is to engage in these talks. Take care. Thank you very
Bye
much.
bye. Take care. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye bye.